we're here with the Alpha Bill, with Avacyn, Guardian Angels, and this time we are with the set Nemesis coming right after Marcania Mass. Definitely, let's see, I think Marcania Mass takes place over 3 different worlds. I don't actually know what this one is, but I do know it has something to do with the, let's see, it's a big part of the Weatherlight story. It's like the beginning part? Like, Ursa's Block was the prequel stuff, and this is really the beginning of the story itself. The main one, anyway. So, going ahead here today, we have not a lot of cards. 5 cards I've picked out and have kind of pushed into here. It's a smaller set, and, you know, Marquee Mass did have a lot of good treasures for us, but I guess the block as a whole did kind of go down a little bit in power. It's not a big thing. We still have some really cool cards. One of them being the Core Haven Classic EDH card. It taps for colors, but you can pay 2 and tap. Prevent all combat damage to be dealt by target attacking creature this turn. It's basically a second Mazavith. However, what I'm currently thinking about is I may end up taking the Mazavith out. Where'd it go? Because if you look at the Mazavith, it doesn't actually make mana. The Core Haven does make mana, and I'm kind of leery about taking out too many planes at this point, because that would just kind of make, you know, land tax and all these other ones a little worse off because they're not getting to thin our deck out nearly as much. So in the future, I may swap out Core Haven with Mazavith. We do need a lot of mana, and we do need our utility lands to be able to make mana. So speaking of needing more mana, Terrain Generator. Taps for colorless, but you can pay 2 and tap to put a basic land from your hand onto the battlefield tap. So this actually has a nice synergy with the land tax effects that just clog our hand up with a lot of lands. I get into the situation where I know the optimal play is to go ahead and grab all the lands that we can, because it's going to thin out our deck, it's going to make sure we draw into more spells. But then we end up having to discard more than we actually want to, just because we can't play lands fast enough and we don't actually have spells that we can or want to cast. So the Terrain Generator does help out with that. And it basically becomes, hey, it's kind of like a 3 mana dump a card. With the land tax, you can kind of claim it's a 3 mana rampant growth when they can't really counter. I don't know. It's a thought, and it is a land slot, so it doesn't take up a lot of utility. It strictly adds utility. So in the future, next round, I'll probably end up cutting the Mazavith for the Core Haven, because Marquee Mass seems to be pretty good about giving us utility lands. Chances are we'll get at least one more in the next set that Mazavith will end up coming out for. So there you have 2 lands, and lands are always pretty easy to add in. We've also got Seal of Cleansing, which is 2 mana enchantment. It's a disenchant. That's all it is. It's a disenchant on an enchantment, and let's see, Aura Silence has already proven how powerful this can be in this deck, because we're getting ways to recycle through them with the Replenish, the Monk Idealist, the Crystal Chimes, and stuff like that. So I actually thought about just taking out Disenchant straight up, because they're both basically the exact same card. This one just has instant speed interaction without our opponent seeing it on board. This one has instant speed interaction, but our opponents get to see it coming beforehand. So it's going to be an interesting night to see if it's the synergy with the rest of the deck that helps Seal Cleansing stand, or if we end up just wanting the instant speed without people seeing it interaction of Disenchant. And that's really what it's going to come down to. One of these is going to get kicked down. So I kind of have both of them in there right now. You might notice that we don't have the scroll rack anymore, and that's really just to see, it's just to give us enough room to try out some of these other new cards. I do like the scroll rack and land text interaction is very powerful for this deck. It gives us actual card draw. The issue just becomes that scroll rack by itself it's fine. It's perfectly fine. But there are also plenty of games where we're not really missing it a huge amount necessarily. I can't say that. Scroll rack is actually just still a good card. It's just one of those things that, well, maybe we don't need it as much as we thought we did. So scroll rack goes to the maybe board, and if we, get the slot back open, then we'll throw it back in because it is really good with that land tax. We've also got Parallax Wave, which is very interesting. It's a 4-mana enchantment with Fading 5. So Fading is a new mechanic for this set. This enchantment will enter the battlefield with 5 counters on it. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you remove a fade counter from it. But if you can't, you have to sacrifice it. And you can remove a fade counter to exile target creatures. That's just one of its effects. But when Parallax Wave leaves the battlefield, each player returns to the battlefield all cards he or she owns, exiled with Parallax Wave. So, interesting interactions here. This is basically a super Oblivion Ring, kind of. Because in theory, you can retain priority, stack all of these, remove a fade counter of targets on, like, if your opponent has like a Blightsteel and Ulamog and Kozilek and a bunch of stuff like that. You can go drop the Parallax Wave, remove counters, target these 3, try and remove some other stuff. And then, with those on the stack, retaining priority, destroy Parallax Wave with something like the Seal of Cleansing. And that will put the Leaf Trigger ability on the stack. So that will resolve. And then the Exile ability here will resolve. I'll make that a little bigger so you guys can see it from home. So you get the Oblivion Ring trick, which I'm not a huge fan of mechanically. I like the new... what was it? The new Banisher Priest template, where it says that it's exiled until this card leaves the field. It makes it all one effect. But this does have a but that interaction is incredibly powerful, so it's something to keep an eye on. We've also got one other great card to bring in, Blinding Angel. 2/4 flyer for 5, but whenever she hits a player, that player skips their next combat phase. So one of the things that I remember talking to Mark about when I was talking about the alpha build was, hey, this is kind of a defensive Voltron build, and having support around Avacyn to help keep the offense going, help enable her offense, but also make it kind of defensive at the same time. Blinding Angel fits nicely into that because she fits into our suite of flyers that we want to attack people with. We want to be able to beat people down with Sarah and Radiant, and we still haven't got a name for her, and Archangel and Warrior Angel. We want to be able to beat people down with these cards and help take some of the pressure off of Avacyn from having to, try and 3 or 4 shots someone by herself. So as we get more of these, that'll help take the pressure off of her. This one has the added defensive ability of, hey, they can't deal combat. They can, they have to skip their combat phase, which is basically, hey, no damage to us, kind of like Avacyn. So she and Blinding Angel kind of share similar roles in that regard. So that's really about it for this. Like I said, this was not a huge update. So let's go ahead and go into it.